What's going on, everyone? It's me, Troi, and I'm here again, of course, with another video. So, making faces, child, please. I emote. Okay. So yeah, I said, let me come up here. Let me get ready. Let me get in here. I said, let me come up here because I want to talk about some books that I read so far this year. It's been on my mind, and I just had a hard time pulling up the mustard seed to come up here and make a video. You know, my vibe just be somewhere else at these days. But I still said I want to come up here and talk about these books, or just give like a quick rapid fire, cursory cake of brevity, stamp of approval or not approval of my final resounding thoughts about these books. Okay, so this is more or less the whole list of books that I read so far this year, and I'm consulting my list here. So give me a second to go down. So the first one that I want to talk about is The Sweetness of Water by Nathan Harris. Now, many of you who watch my channel over the years know that if I check out a book from the library and I love that book, I'm gonna go and buy my own copy for myself. So easily, The Sweetness of Water was a 2 thumbs up for me. What I loved about this book, gosh, I gotta try to make this quick, right? Well, in regards to setting, it takes place after the Civil War and after the emancipation of slaves, but between the Reconstruction era. So it's right in that gray area, but it has primarily to do with this gentleman, this man named George, this white farm owner, farmlander, whatnot, named George, who is having a farm passed down throughout his family, covers a wide land, but is not very productive in terms of productivity. So he struggles a lot with that, and then he discovers that there are 2 ex-slaves, 2 brothers, who are camping out in the woods near his land, and given their talent at agriculture, their skill set when it comes to blacksmith, he invites them with room in the barn, of course, and board to help him revitalize his farm. Second to that, George is also dealing with a wife who's pretty much checked out, but he and her are both waiting to hear what is the fate of their son, who went to fight as a Confederate soldier in the war, and they learn very quickly at the beginning of the book that he died. But then they learn equally as quickly at the beginning of the book that he actually survived and he's on his way home. The trick or the twist there is that their son is gay, okay? And he has been holding on to this long-term relationship of being lovers with one of his boyhood friends, a friend who also went into the war, and the friend who did deliver the message that the son passed away and was wrong. So that was The Sweetness of Water. Now here's the thing, let's rapid fire it up. What I loved about this book is that the author did a steady-handed job of staying away from cliches or what the expectation was going to be for some of these characters, particularly the gay relationship between George's son and his boyhood friend. You would think that this was a book that's going to offer us, the readers, this, flowery, blossoming rose of here's this gay couple who are faced with this heavy challenge of wanting to maintain their identity, maintain their coupleship in the face of all these obstacles and challenges, both cultural, both in terms of gender identity, all the crazy stuff. It really doesn't take much to think or to even think back that far on how some people's mindsets are when it comes to gay people. So we already know what the hell they had to go through. But you would think that that was going to be something that's going to be a core defining a challenge for these characters to overcome by the end of the book, so that they can maintain their love of one another and walk off into the sunset. Mr. Nathan Harris said, oh hell no, it ain't gonna be no walking off in the sunset. The twist in all of that, although it did come across as a plot point, it was done nice enough that when I really digested my expectations and received what Nathan Harris was giving me, it made a lot more sense about these characters. It was much more realistic how their relationship ended, and much more dynamic how it ended. And more than anything, it was much far much more plausible how their relationship ended. Of course, I can't give it all away, but the point is that I'm trying to reiterate is that the author stayed away from cliches or what I can't speak for everybody else, but me personally as a reader had come to expect when you're looking at gay characters in this particular time period, etc., etc. So no, it wasn't gonna be no flowers in the field. What's that? Flowers in the attic either. It wasn't gonna be no flowers in the field, no flowers in the attic. David Harris, he pretty much said, y'all, you're not getting this, and just dumped it out on us. And I loved it. I loved it. It was tragic, but I recognized that it was a stepping forward within the plot. Needed to be done. Not needed, but I guess that I'm thinking of my hesitation is in terms of who suffered the most from this particular plot point in the book, but it's I get it. I get it. I get it. So adjacent to that, when it comes to the authors skewing away from cliches, is the fact that when you look at the two ex-slaves, the two brothers who were residing within George's woods, one of them is the much more competent, articulate one, and the other one is a little slower and mute. I don't want to use slow in a derogatory way, but I guess the best way to put it is he was a character who will just swap that out with reserve. But see, if I go ahead and just lay it like this, it was their relationship, their dynamic was very much giving a little bit of Steinbeck's of Mice and Men. So if you can kind of envision that, then you know what I'm leading to. But what I love in this particular story, or what Nathan did, was that he gave a full backstory as it regards why one of the brothers, why he seemed so much more reserved when it came to speaking, why he seemed so much more kind of disconnected when it came to just his interaction with other individuals, with the exception of his brother, who understood him clearly, regardless of whether or not he used his tongue or not. So there was a backstory there. It was not just a character who was just kind of pushed into this role, pushed into this characterization of someone who was debilitating, or who was feeling the debilitations of a mental illness. It was much more of, there was a sequence of events that led to him being in the particular state that he was, as he is presented to us, the reader. And I love that. That gave it just much more 3D and depthness to this character, that he did more than, by the end, or by the time we understand his faith, there was much more to him than just a simple character presented on stage, to be given the fate that he was given, I guess you can say. So I love that. Hopefully that made sense, but just understand that, to me, I feel like the author skewered away from cliches in those terms. So I was happy to read that. And for me personally, anytime I'm reading a book and I'm getting answers, very clear answers, I'm pretty much on board. With that being said, my favorite character was the character of George, because I love the fact that he came across as just slightly timid, slightly cowardly, very much insecure as it regards, him instinctually understanding the sexuality of his son, but also having a wife who was once considered like the belle of the community, the beautiful girl, the maiden that every man wanted to court. But the only thing he's leaving her with is this dusty old ass farm, so he was very much insecure in that area. But I love the character of George because it was clear from Nathan's writing of this character that he was a character who was designed to overcome a lot of his own internal struggles. And for him to have done those things, to him to overcome those struggles, it had to mean him taking external actions. And one of the driving reasons, or one of the driving core reasons for him to, shore up all this bravery, is when he is in the protective mode of not only his son, but also of the two ex-slave men that he hired to work on his farm. Those are the things that become transformative for this character of George, where, like I said, that if you think about that bit of metaphor where his farmland was not producing anything, it was pretty much Dusty, a Dust Bowl, and Raggedy, and all these other characterizations of it, and editorizing. You know, by the end of the book, he managed to gain the reverse of that, but unfortunately, it was left up to other characters for them to maintain all that he's transformed, not only himself, but his farmland too, which is not giving it away. I hope that's not too vague. But see, because George was my favorite character, maybe about 60 pages away from the end or so, we kind of learn, or we witness, you know, the resounding story to his story, you know, without giving it away. And then that's when things pick up from the perspective of his wife, and you know, she had some incidental moments within the story, but she really does carry out and round out the end. While it was still good, it was kind of dry. I was like, ugh, I really like her, but I need George back in the picture. George front and center once again. So George confronted a lot of demons. He confronted a lot of the wet mopness inside of his spirit, and you know, to being able to tower forward and hold up the flame, and just so many different scenes in which he had to, like I said, shore up that bravado to be the guardian and protector of so many people that he believed in. You know, it was just like, yes. I like, yes. So yeah, I did enjoy The Sweetness of Water. And this is an author easily who I'll be looking out for in the future. So yes, do I recommend this book? I don't like to use the word recommend, as y'all know, but I would invite you to give it a shot. I just leave it. It's got a fair amount of twists or unexpected sequences that you might like. Anyway, that's all for today on this video, and I think that I'm gonna try to stop it here and continue forward with another book, since this is already 10 minutes. And I gotta get my clothes out the dryer. Bye.